Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trek Canon. So, today I am going to be doing a review of Season 3, Episode 4 of Star Trek Picard entitled No Win Scenario. So, I don't know if y'all could tell by this big old Kool-Aid grin smile that I have on my face, but this episode was fantastic. This episode was just awesome, spectacular, just this was one of the best episodes of Star Trek that I have seen in years. Look, this episode, No Win Scenario, is going to be on my top 10 list of Star Trek episodes of any series, of any episodes ever made. Let's talk a little bit about this particular episode. Now, we pick up with them being stuck in the nebula, and everything like that. Come to find out, well, I ain't gonna jump ahead of myself. And just so you guys know, it's gonna be plenty of spoilers in this episode. And yeah, it's gonna be plenty of spoilers. So if you haven't watched the episode, stop this video and go watch it and then come back and let's talk about it. But besides that, they're inside this nebula, man. They all jacked up. They sinking towards the center, man, towards the gravitational source. They keep getting hit ever so often by these waves that they can't really explain because they're not hitting any asteroids, right? So the Shrike is basically on the outside looking for him. And yes, I remember the name of the ship. It's not the Woodpecker, it's not the Sparrow, it's the Shrike. Okay, but it's a badass ship. But anyway, it's on the outskirts of the nebula, man, waiting for him and everything like that. So now I wanted to point out what made this episode so great to me. Okay, besides the story and everything like that, I'm gonna get into just everything that I just really loved about this episode. Now, from what I gathered about this episode was all about family, teamwork, the bonds that we build. And in doing so, right, we lift each other up, support each other. But let's dive deeper into how this episode wove that around in such a great fashion. Now, we know that there's issues between Picard and Jack. And in this episode, we go into a lot more of their relationship because apparently, man, they ain't got no power. They're sinking, like I said. There's nothing that they can do about it. Even Riker goes in and talks to Picard and be like, "Hey, man," which I thought was cool. He's like, "Yo, be quiet. Look, you was right. I'm sorry, man. The reason that I've been, not me, because Riker was making some real tripped out decisions. Riker's usually gung ho. He's usually the one getting the ship messed up, but achieving the mission. But he goes to explain that when his son died, man, and they lowered the casket into the ground, he lost basically faith in the universe, even despite all of the things that he's seen. And I found that interesting that Riker wouldn't have a belief in the afterlife when I'm pretty sure that Picard at least talked to Riker about what the events of Tapestry, So, but anyway, I don't know if you could consider that an afterlife or that the Q has control of the afterlife, but it has been explicitly stated in, well, not explicit, but it has been implied in Star Trek that there is an afterlife, all right, or a furtherance of conscious. So, anyway, we still have the changeling that's running around on the ship, and it's really cool how Seven is looking for the changeling. And let me get into, Captain Shaw. Captain Shaw has grown on me. I really, really did Captain Shaw. His personality is, totally different from what you would expect of a normal Starfleet captain, right? But that brings a new dynamic to the various personalities that's in Star Trek. And I could understand his personality being the way that it is now because he's from Chicago, so. And one of the things that I found interesting was, I never could really understand why he felt the way that he did towards Picard, and by extension Riker, I guess, because he was at Wolf 359, and we know how Cisco reacted to Picard the first time he seen him during the episode Emissary. So I like the fact that they gave a actual plausible explanation as to, hey man, I don't like you, and this is why, out of all of these people that was, it was 50 of us, but only like 10 or 11 could get on a lifeboat, on an escape pod. And I was one of those people chosen, this lonely dude. And, the way that he described Wolf 359, man, it was just, with 11,000 people dead. People have always talked about Wolf 359 in the past, but never to that level of detail and horror that must have been, he said the space was on fire. You know what I mean? Now, let's talk about Seven's hunt for the changeling. See, the thing is this. When I was watching the episode and she was going into each one of these rooms and corridors, I was thinking to myself, hey man, don't you know the protocols for looking for changelings? Man, you gotta put the phaser on a high setting wide beam, man, and sweep the area. Didn't we cover this on Deep Space Nine with Training with Odo? But seven is always seven. She's gonna do it. She's gonna look for it. And it was pretty cool how Riker was like, "Yo, seven, all right, we got a changeling on board right now. It ain't gonna make no sense to tell everybody and scare them even more now. Instead of people being desperate, they're gonna be desperate and distrusting of the fellow man. It's gonna cause chaos. So look, won't you just, hey, do your thing, look for it." And then she goes to tell Captain Shaw. And Shaw's like, yo, man, and I like the way he call it residue, residue, gooey stuff, you know what I'm saying? And it's interesting because I don't recall Odo leaving anything like that, or the female shapeshifters leaving anything like that, or how obvious it was to have an actual, changeling pot when all they need is a bowl, cup, anything that they could turn into a liquid in or relax in. They could do it just all over the floor if they chose to do so. But it's odd how he just, I'm gonna bring my pot. He just travels with his pot and nobody asks no questions. But I will have to say, I love the updates to the graphics that they do of the changelings in their liquid or gelatinous form. It's a very great update for from the DS9 days, and they put a lot into that. Man, it almost kind of looks like a more translucent blob. And for those who don't know, man, Blob from like the 1980s, not the original black and white Blob, but the really cool 1980s Blob. If you take a look at that Blob and you look at the changes that they have in the new Picard series, very similar. I wonder if they took inspiration. There's been a lot of talk about the lighting that be in the new Trek. And when I started to notice it in this episode, I quickly dismissed it for the fact that, hey, man, we ain't got no power. We don't have no power. But then they turned on the holodeck, and then I was like, but you got enough power for a holodeck. But then they explained, oh, yeah, man, if we're in dire situations, then we come down here and everything like that. But my thought on it is this. If you're in a dire situation, the last thing we need to be doing is chilling out on a holodeck. We need to be trying to figure out how to get out the direness. That's what we need to be doing, figuring out how to get out the direness, not hanging out in the bar. Speaking of, Picard spends a lot of time in his older age around alcohol. Don't you notice this? Like every flashback, he's in the bar. And it's cool how they did this flashback as far as in this episode to 5 years prior, where he's sitting in the bar and he's approached by all of these Starfleet cadets and young officers, and they're asking him about certain things. And one of the things I found interesting is that Picard was getting hunted by Alpha Herogen. Now, first of all, what Picard doing in Delta Squadron? Second, how Picard get away from Alpha Herogen? For those of you who don't know what an Alpha Herogen is, that's what Tony Todd, the great Tony Todd, played in a Voyager episode where he himself was hunting species 8472 by himself and winning. Like, so, but then Picard explained it. Oh, right, I had Worf with me because that's the look. There's two people that Picard always roll with whenever he leads a ship. It's gonna be Data and Worf. Look, with those two protecting you, look, I don't care if you're an Alpha Herogen, I don't care if you're a group of crazy Borg. Look, you ain't, I'm straight. I'm straight. But then, didn't anybody catch when Sean Seven was talking in Shaw's quarters, right? And he was talking about you got to find a pot, and Seven was like, "Are you talking about cannabis?" Look, that got me thinking. So you trying to say that there is actual weed in the Star Trek universe? I guess that'll make sense. It had medicinal purposes, all this kind of stuff. But then it got me thinking. All right, well then, who got the best we in Star Trek. I was like, okay, well, the Vulcans, man, I bet they got it down to a science. I bet they genetically modified some strands, man, that made some that make you just go into a whole. But then I was like, nah, nah, nah. I bet it's probably the Orions. But you can't trust the Orions and the Ferengi. You can't trust them with they probably laced theirs with something like that, or it probably ain't even real. They probably did something different than that, you know. And then I'm probably thinking Cleon weed, right? But that'll kill you. Clean weed will probably kill you. That'll probably kill you. But you know who I narrowed it down to? Riser. I bet Riser got the best weed. But look, that's neither here nor there. So let's talk about Vatic. We get a little bit more into Vatic, the captain of the Shrike, right? And she goes to cut off her hand, man, and it falls into this puddle and it levitates into what looks like somebody from the Great Link. So you trying to tell me that a changeling has taken over and is manipulating a person by their hand? Look, whoever was look, they got a lot of influence. So we got the Blob for that way, and now we got what was it, Vampire Hunter D? You know, because he had that hand thing too. You know, I'm thinking but I like it for a wait for, as far as being able to get through a lot of sensors and pass a lot of things like that, man, attaching yourself to a biological, and I know how disgusting that must be for a changeling, but that is a pretty ingenious thing to do. That being said, man, I don't know what's going on with Jack Crusher, man, to it as these dissidents from the Great Link really want him, man, but judging by those like hallucination things that's going on in his head with all that red destruction stuff and beyond the green door. I'm sorry, beyond the red door. Let's get our references right. Don't look that movie up, people. All right. Did anybody notice Picard said effing? I would say, but Picard said fucking. Picard said, I mean, with some oomph. He said it with his chest. Picard said, and I believed it. It didn't have that Britishness on it. It was a straight hood. Look, I always say Seven is the shit. Seven is straight up always gangster. So we come to find out that Captain Shaw, man, he used to be a grease monkey. So we have to take off the shielding because Beverly, being an outstanding doctor and observant person, always that she is, right? Come to find out that there's contractions going on inside this nebula, right? So there's some kind of biological entity that's absorbing or digesting matter and having contractions that are expressed in energy waves, and they're hitting the ship. And basically Crusher is like, yo, once this actual contraction happens, there's going to be so much of the energy release that the ship is going to be destroyed. So they end up, man, convincing Riker, man, look, hey, we got a plan. We could surf the wave, we could do, we could do this. And I like the references and callbacks to other episodes and things that they've done, like in Booby Trap, for instance, where Picard, where they reference his ability to, fly blind and everything like that, or with limited power and out of asteroid fields, which he has been shown to do. Now, Shaw and Seven, man, and Shaw comes up with this, man, because like I said, man, Shaw is really, grown on me. He's basically like, yo, this would be the perfect opportunity for that changeling to, just basically put it in all this planning we doing. So him and Seven comes up with a plan. And lo and behold, here comes Cadet LaForge. I mean, Instant LaForge coming through the door talking about some, hey, I was sent from the bridge to help. First of all, the Chamberlain should have known better than to impersonate the pilot. You gonna need your main pilot on the bridge when y'all doing all this, man. You should have came through as somebody else. You know what I mean? Or just straight up ran in there and did what you had to do instead of trying to be, it ain't like Shaw gonna be able to overpower you while he down there under the thing, and you're a changeling. Anyway, Seven ends up, interrogating her and ask her, yo, who am I, Commander what? And she answers wrong, man. You Commander Annika, blasted her. Now, I'm gonna have to put my phaser on something other than just chest shot when it comes to a changeling. And I'm gonna have to put it on straight up disintegrate. I'm gonna need to put that on disintegrate. They even reference, when they're trying to get Riker to, go along with the plan. Hey, this is what we spent our lives being great at. You know what I mean? Think of the things we've done in our exploits in the Next Generation, in the movies. Think of the things as a crew that we've done that was been so crazy, man, yet because of the trust that we have in our abilities, man, our science, right, and each other. we were always able to pull through, man. Why you think this would be any different, man? And I love the fact that they referenced that to help bring him back to who he was. And when I say who he was, I'm talking about Riker. Man, so they end up, man, getting ready to lead this Nebula, man, get everything set up. And look, let me just say the graphics in this episode, I call this a short movie, but the graphics that they put into this, the attention to detail that they put into the CGI that they had, it was a beauty to behold. You know what I mean? It was top notch, next level, just straight up. I'm looking at something that somebody loves right here. Somebody like me put this together. You know what I mean? Like, man, when they go, man, catch this wave, and the way that the nacelles was bleeding the energy in and absorbing it, how the plan was something that was feasible and something that has been done in various different ways throughout Star Trek history. It worked in canon. Everything in that scenario of how they did it fit. You know what I mean? And look, one of the most gangster things, Riker. Look, it's always a joy having Riker back. The strike out there, right? Riker said, "Oh, you want to be? All right, I got you. You showed me something a little bit earlier that, yeah, I'm picked up on that. I thought that was beautiful. I'm gonna use it." This dude grabs a big asteroid piece right behind him. Shrike don't see it. He stops, man, let this asteroid come, man. He dead smack hit on the strike. Look, I clapped. That moment right there, I clapped. Now, look, all of that is in conjunction with outstanding music that's going along with all of this. Look, I was on the edge of my seat. I was on the edge. Look, I was on the edge of my seat. This look, everything was look, and then they could have just left it there. They could have just left it, be they go out warp, nah. We get to see one of the most beautiful spectacles ever put to a Star Trek thing that got to do with showing somebody something, right? The birth of this species that we have never seen in Star Trek. And yes, to seek out new life was actually spoken again in the episode. Beverly, do your thing, lady. Look, look. This episode was awesome. This episode was awesome. And the overall thing, I talked about it earlier, the connections that we have. You know, in the flashback, one of the people that wasn't a cadet, it was a civilian, young lad, sitting at the bar, and he asked Picard, "Hey, well, you've done all of that and everything, but do you have anything outside of that? Do you have family?" And Picard answers him, rather smugly, well, I've never needed no any other family basically than Starfleet. You know what I'm saying? So, and he goes to look, and the dude is gone. And this is the memory that Picard is having as he's looking at his son across the bridge. And you can see that his son is realize, oh yeah, you do recognize me. And yeah, I did come to try to find you. And yeah, that's what you said. But the overall theme of this episode, man, look, I loved it. And it is so Star Trek. And this is what I gathered. Y'all might gather something different, Canon Nights, but this is what I gathered. You know, when you get into your prime, man, past your prime, man, when you get into the older age, it's not the thing, it's not the how much money you've made that you find to be the most important. It's not all of the things you've accumulated that you find will be the most important. It's not all the places that you've traveled. You know what I mean? That or all of the businesses you've owned or started or anything like that. What it is at the end is the connections that we've made to each other and those loved ones. Those bonds that we've created and able to carry on, through the stories and the good connections that we've made. Because as humans, that's what it is all about, and that's what it should always be about. And I love this Star Trek episode because that's what Star Trek epitomizes. You know what I'm saying? Seek out new life and new civilizations. And a boldly go where no person has gone before in an effort to form connections. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And as always, peace, recycle, and say the whales. You guys be cool.